National boundaries at sea are invisible, but for marine animals swimming across them it can be a matter of life or death. This month, scientists on a Greenpeace vessel conducted a study around the Galapagos Marine Reserve. They discovered that biodiversity in these vast protected areas is thriving, but safety is a concern in the international waters nearby. East of the Galapagos archipelago, migratory species have to cross an area open to industrial fishing, which isn't regulated by any national laws. In this region, as in others worldwide, the high seas are facing a rising tide of human activity.
With new industry, such as things like deep water mining and unsustainable fishing practices, what we're particularly kind of concerned about is that these areas are particularly susceptible. There's a danger but without actually having some kind of recognition of this kind of incredible diversity, we may lose it before we can even get a chance to recognise, appreciate and protect it.
Until now, nations have struggled to designate conservation sites outside their own exclusive economic zones. But activists are hopeful that a new international treaty will change this, allowing for the protection of ocean areas beyond national jurisdictions.
Si conseguimos que esta zona sea declarada área marina protegida, será una gran victoria, ya que cerraremos ese círculo y conseguiremos que un espacio que ha sido altamente amenazado por la pesca industrial pueda estar protegido y estas especies puedan transitar de manera segura.
The goal is to remove destructive activities like intense fishing and heavy maritime traffic from delicate ecosystems and migratory paths.
The sharks are going to do what the sharks are going to do, the turtles are going to do what they're going to do. It's up to us to accommodate for them. The idea is to find the best solution that accommodates them with the minimum impact on, obviously, different sectors and their economic activities.
For a long time, the idea of protecting high seas seemed unrealistic. Covering half of the planet's surface, international waters are managed by a wide range of organisations. Each one focuses on specific regions or activities. None of these groups have the authority to ensure the conservation of ocean biodiversity. Recent studies suggest that protecting key areas of the high seas, as highlighted here, could restore ocean health with minimal impact on the fishing industry. But conservation efforts must consider all offshore activities, including global shipping traffic, crossing sensitive locations. Protecting the ocean while maintaining our interconnected economies is a challenging task. It took more than 15 years of discussions at the United Nations before delegates reached a historic agreement to protect marine biodiversity in international waters in March 2023.
Ladies and gentlemen, the ship has reached the shore.
The Biodiversity Beyond National Jurisdictions Agreement, also known as the Treaty of the High Seas, doesn't create new protected areas. However, it contains a legal framework for nations to do so. The treaty has been signed by 88 parties, including the European Union and all its member states, as well as China and the US.
What we have with the High Seas Treaty is, for the first time, the ability to protect 2/3 of the global ocean. We have the ability to comprehensively assess potentially harmful impacts on the ocean and its precious resources. And for the first time, we have the ability to ensure that the benefits and the access to those resources are equitably and fairly shared.
The treaty will not become effective until at least 60 states ratify it. Mina Epps, director of the Ocean Team at the International Union for Conservation of Nature, believes that the signatory countries want to see this treaty implemented.
That will is really there. So now it's a matter of how can we help the countries? How can we help by building the capacity, raising awareness? And also, I think there are some question marks from also the Global South, thinking about what is it going to cost to implement, what's the burden, etc. In the same time, in parallel, we also need to build the institutional mechanism to support it.
The Monaco Blue Initiative is one of the global platforms that allows experts and decision makers discuss how to implement the treaty once it becomes effective. At this year's forum, the Seychelles announced their ratification, joining Chile and Palau as the only countries to do so thus far. For many coastal nations, their economies and food security hinge on the health of high sea ecosystems.
The high seas are remote, the open ocean, but it's completely relevant to life in the coastal seas, to the health of coral reefs and to fish stocks and fishing communities. So if we don't manage the high seas, we can break those connections, and so the fisheries can collapse in coastal seas. If we do protect the high seas effectively, then we can really maintain the resilience and the robustness of the fish stocks and therefore also the livelihoods dependent on them.
Many questions about the practical implementation of the agreement still remain. Achieving consensus among nations with diverse economic interests is challenging.
It is so much easier to protect anything within a country's waters because you are dealing with one government, right? The high seas is a little bit like the Wild West. It is going to be very challenging because even though there is a UN process, a legal instrument for countries to agree to protect areas, of course we know that some countries are going to oppose to anything that prevents their fishing unaccounted, unregulated everywhere they want.
A pressing issue is funding. A global biodiversity target aims to protect at least 30% of marine life by 2030. Enforcing this will require substantial budgets, with costs and responsibilities shared fairly among state and possibly even non-state actors.
Qui est-ce qui doit payer pour protéger la nature? Est-ce que c'est vous? Est-ce que c'est moi? Nous devons réfléchir et mettre en place des mécanismes pour permettre le financement de la protection de la haute mer.
On the other hand, some costs could be considered an investment.
C'est assez contre-intuitif, mais une aire marine protégée en haute mer permet aux stocks de poissons de revivre et donc aux pêcheurs de développer leur activité économique. On considère que le ratio est de 10, c'est-à-dire $1 investi en haute mer génère $10 de retour sur investissement.
The European Union, which brokered the High Seas Agreement, views it as a manifestation of its commitment to sustainable development and the equitable sharing of marine resources.
Now we need to push ourselves into the ratification, and we are quite ahead in our EU procedure. I really hope that we will do it as soon as possible, our member states as well. And be mindful, we need 60 signatures. Almost half of them can come from the European Union, so we are committed to do it as soon as possible.
Supporters of the treaty are advocating for it to be implemented by 2025, even though there are concerns about generating enough approval in time. But researchers remind us that with many marine species facing extinction, the ocean cannot wait.